Yes, well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity, Phil. I think we are just as excited to share our student voice as you probably are about hearing our student voices, I hope. So first of all, we would like to introduce ourselves. Well, I am Daniela. I am from Moldova, but I've been living in the Netherlands for the past 5 years. And I'm doing my master's in learning and development and organizations at the university in the Netherlands, Maastricht University, of course. And Nina, can you introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, so I'm Nina Joustra. I am from the Netherlands and I just finished my master's. Actually, yesterday I handed in my master's thesis, so excited to move on to the working world. I'm doing the same master's as Dani, so also learning and development, and I'll also be working as a learning and development consultant, which I'm very excited about, which is basically similar to what we're doing today, which is sharing a little bit about, what research says about learning and development in organizations, and also in this case in relation to education. So very excited to be here today. Thank you.
Right, so yeah, Nina, I think you can move on the slides.
Yeah, it's the next one, right?
I think we can't see it.
Oh, because I did move to the next slide.
Okay, perfect. Yes, perfect. I think now it's working. So, so the reason why we're here today with you is to talk about a project that we did as part of our university degree. So it was a consulting project, a real-life project that we did for DCP. That's a very long name, but in short, the DCP stands for the Dutch Employers Cooperation Program, which is an organization that offers training and advisory services to other employers' organizations in emerging markets. And the idea of this project, when they approached us, it was to find out how to best incorporate online and offline elements in their service delivery. And this started at the beginning as something that was very specific for our client. But in the end, we found out that we actually did a very general account of blended learning and how anybody can use it and how anybody can design a good blended learning program. So in this regard, I think that our findings are also going to be useful for some of our teachers and educators here today. So the approach that we took in this project when we wanted to see how we can combine offline and online elements in a program was first we looked at how to optimize learning in general. Then we found out that there are so many definitions of blended learning. So then it was necessary to see exactly what are the different dimensions of that and how we can combine them. And then, of course, the next step was to look at how to actually design a blended learning program. And finally, what are some limitations and challenges that come with that? So the approach that we took was, Nina, next slide, please.
Yeah, I forwarded it. It should work, hopefully.
Okay, well, anyway, the way we approached this project was first to conduct a very big literature research, of course, but that's the boring part. Although it was very informative, we really wanted to get some practical expert advice. So we ended up conducting 23 interviews and 4 surveys. And we talked to experts in very different fields across domains, because what we really wanted to find out was what applies across fields about blended learning. Like, what can we all use and what can we all find out? So to do that, we talked to professors, we talked to big technology companies, we talked to the International Labor Organization, their training center, and also some companies that are specialized specifically in delivering learning and development solutions and that have experience in blended learning. So in the end, we had a lot of information and, well, a lot of findings, and Nina is going to tell you a little bit about the things that we found out.
Yeah, so thank you, Dani. I'm hoping you get to see my slides. I'm guessing it's a bit delayed, but I'll do my best to present our findings. So basically what we did is we had these 4 pillars that Dani already introduced. So on the first hand, we started looking at optimizing learning. So this, we really dove into the literature on figuring out, okay, what does it mean to optimize learning? How can you optimize learning? Also now in an online setting, maybe a little bit more. And we talked about 2 main concepts. So the why of learning, really connecting with the learner motivation and finding out why people are there to learn. So I guess in terms of students, it was really practically about making sure that when you're starting any new course or any new topic, you're really connecting a little bit with the why or the reason why your students are there. So this could be at the beginning of your sessions to really take like 10, 20 minutes to just have a little bit of a discussion. Okay, what are our learning goals? What is it that you guys want to get out of this? How is it going to help you work towards your degree? To really have clarity on this, because that will increase the motivation of your learners a lot and also make them feel a lot more engaged and heard. And then secondly is the how of learning, where we kind of dove a little bit more into the kind of neurobiology part of how learning actually works in the brain, and a few small techniques that you could do there. There is an entire report and toolbox overview that fits with what we are presenting today. So if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to us and we would be happy to share with you, because it's quite a long document. As well as like all of the information being in there. So I won't go into too much depth today. Then, like I said, we have the blended learning dimensions. I think this was a really important finding, because a lot of people assume that blended learning is just online and offline, but it is so much more than that. It is also a lot about making sure that you have a mix between self-directed learning and collaborative learning. So having group sessions, but then also ensuring that your students are able to have individual spaces of learning, and really kind of making a mix between both of those. Then there's structured learning and unstructured learning. So unstructured learning could really be like students themselves engaging in a few extra literature that they could read up on, or watching a few videos or something that they would like. To have it a little bit more of an unstructured, they can just kind of grab and go what they want. And structured learning is really when you have the syllabus, this is what you need to know, this is what you need to learn. Then again, custom and off-the-shelf content. I think as a lot of us are moving towards the learning, like the blended learning and online environment, a lot of people have found this very useful to use actually off-the-shelf content that is already available. As a student, I use YouTube for so many things. Every time I don't know how to figure out something, I always find myself going to YouTube. And I think that as a educator, really make use of the resources that are there, because oftentimes so many videos are really well produced and they're really able to explain topics in a very clear manner, and that would save you guys a lot of time. But also just in general, it's nice for students to have a bit diversity in how they're learning and the different type of sources that they're getting it from. So definitely recommend blending both custom and off-the-shelf content. And then lastly is practice and performance support. So this is really where we're talking about having different kinds of tests, having different kind of assignments, and also mixing up both. I think the key here is really to blend as much as you can to make it as engaging and as possible, as engaging as possible. And then thirdly, we really go into how to actually design blended learning. This is more in-depth explained in the actual report that we would happily send to you guys. We present a few models that could really help you to actually design your courses and think about the different dimensions to include, and also choosing your delivery method for the information that you're trying to share with people. And then lastly, of course, dealing with limitations and challenges, because blended learning, as we're experiencing today as well, you always have some technical issues or some even social issues. What we were hearing before about this idea of engagement, students feeling a lot more left out because the personal connection isn't really there as much in an online environment. So we provided some insights and ideas of how we can actually mitigate these challenges. Then we also distilled kind of 7 main best practices from all of the findings that we had. So firstly was really to connect with your learners' why. Secondly, making sure that you really set a clear objective for every single session that you have. So every single session, every single interaction that you have with your learners, with your students, should have a clear objective set. Making sure that you're involving both learners and management. This is more of an organizational perspective, but I guess in a student way, it could really be making sure that you're engaging everyone. If they have some student coach or if they're working in groups or whatever, really make sure that you're taking a holistic approach, that you're allowing them to get feedback from each other, that everyone knows what it is that they're learning. That will also help you optimize, making it a journey. In most universities, it's pretty straightforward because it's part of a larger curriculum, but really, again, it's all about showing where the course fits into the entire degree that they are doing, making it fun. I think a lot of people appreciate this in learning, but as students, again, we really love having fun. We love these kind of engaging quizzes. We love being able to work on things ourselves and maybe doing things a little bit of a different way. So think a bit out of the box, but don't be afraid to experiment. Then a very important one is actually when it comes to technology, oftentimes less is more. Really try to kind of limit everything that you're doing. Don't do too many fancy things. Keep it simple, stick to the Zoom session, maybe have 1 or 2 quizzes, but don't go overboard because then it will just confuse learners more. And then 7th, train your trainers. Working in an online environment as a trainer is just very different. So be sure to either educate yourself or ask a university for some education or help on it. There's so many resources out there. So kind of keep on learning like you're doing today. Yeah, so that was really everything. Let me see if I can kind of stop sharing. It's a lot of information. I saw that Alexandra already shared what we had in total. So thank you guys so much. And let's see if there's any questions, if we have time.
Wow. I'm blown away. That was I'm so impressed. Yeah, wow. That's absolutely fantastic. I think you should both, well, all of you, the whole team, should be applauded just for the amount of work that you've clearly put in there. And I know there's certainly a lot of interest in people wanting to have a look in your research. So I think, yeah, it's just, yeah, I'm blown away there, if I'm honest. That was so good. I have to say, personally, I think that's so good, and like so many take-home messages there. It's too many to mention, but I think just including the why of learning at the start is so important. When you're starting to create learning materials, you have to really kind of have that in your mind. And I think, while we don't all have to be experts in kind of neurobiology, I think at least having an idea as to how students actually learn, what goes in, what's going on behind, in the head, I think it is so important as well. And certainly the less is more as well. They were kind of just 3 things that I jotted down is another take-home message. But yeah, I think we do have time for one question. I'm sorry, I'd love to include more, but it's I think Ellis has their hand up. If Nick could give them permission to unmute themselves. But I think there are a few questions in the chat as well. So if you had time afterwards, I know everyone would appreciate anything you have to say.
You should be able to unmute yourself now, Ellis.
Are you there, Ellis? I think we may have lost Ellis. If anyone else would like to ask a question, if you'd like to just raise your hand, we do have time for one question. David has his hand up.
You should be able to unmute yourself now, David.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, fantastic presentation. So, different camera today. So, but to questions for the team really, how do the edtech industry has a habit of bolting on shiny bells and whistles, and I really like your phrase of keeping it very simple, like throw a 1 or 2 pieces of technology or something rather than loads of things and make it overly complex. What do we say to people that are trying to push this on? Our managers, our sponsors, the people at the top says, oh, well, why haven't we got this shiny bit in here, rather than getting the basics sorted? How do we as technologists do that? What would you say to us to say to our people?
I think as someone who studied this, like obviously, and also writing the report, easiest thing to do is just, we have some of the sources in there saying that, like, hey, it really doesn't work if you're overloading people. There's a lot of literature on this that, you know, people need simplistic messaging. When you think about how our brain works and how we receive information, you need to understand that from every single session that we have, we are definitely going to remember one key takeaway, but if you're lucky, we're going to remember 3 things. Now, if you're firing a lot of different types of formats and mediums on us, that's just not really going to work. And I think especially also not even towards the student perspective, but from an educator perspective, I think a lot of people shy away from blended learning because it seems difficult, because there are so many different technologies that they feel that they have to master and how they feel they have to work. So I think another really big argument that I would give to sponsors or to the university if they want to push you to make it complicated is just that, hey, I feel a lot more comfortable and confident, and we all do, if we can just keep it a little bit more simple, so that it's simple for us. We'll have less technological difficulties. We'll feel more confident. We'll be able to engage more with our students, maybe even have more time for a conversation, because in the end, that's really where the biggest learning happens, is in these interactive moments where people are able to discuss together. And in that case, in that sense, like keeping it really simple is really going to allow you to do that a lot more. So that would be kind of like my answer. So you can take the literature, scientific route, and say this really works. Here's the proof. Or you can just take your personal or educator perspective, say like, hey, it's just really going to help us as well to keep it simple.
That's really valuable ammunition for me. Thank you, Nina. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And of course, just to add something, you can always argue the cost perspective, right? Because you said that there's a lot of, people sometimes just use technology as an excuse to not develop the skills that they need in order to teach effectively. So then you just hide behind the technology. But then if you're trying to push the argument of costs, like reducing costs, then it's even better, because you can just say, we don't actually need that much technology, as well as as long as you deliver a good message, So then it's also easier to convince management from that perspective.
It reminds me of the film, a golf film, but where somebody had to sell all the golf clubs, and then they were just really good at using anything to get the ball into the hole, because they're basically good at golf. So basically get good at teaching technology. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Great ammunition.
And also we've talked to a lot of experts across many different fields, and none of them really emphasized technology. What all of them talked about was really the why. So getting that motivation part in your learner and just trying to make the learner see why is it that they want to learn a specific thing. And then the technology and everything else is just something that you can use on top of that to deliver your message better. But it really should not be the focus of any blended learning program or any other kind of program.
Very powerful messages. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, David. That was a great question. And thank you, Nina and Daniela. A brilliant answer again. I think you've both got great careers ahead of you. So